Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and as promised, we're out here with the 2015 Toyota 4Runner, and we're taking a look at the TRD Pro model because this is all new for the 2015 model year. Now the 4Runner has long been an off-road focused vehicle, and the TRD Pro model takes things up a notch with some dedicated off-roading ability straight from the factory that's also warranted by Toyota. Before we go much further, let's talk about competition. There are really only two entries in this segment that compete directly with the 4Runner. I'm going to have to discount the Jeep Grand Cherokee because it's not a truly rugged off-road vehicle anymore. Jeep has really gone towards a more on-road focused vehicle with the Grand Cherokee, and they've really met with a great deal of sales success as a result. That Jeep Grand Cherokee no longer has solid axles, front or rear. It has an independent suspension. It's really not as heavily modifiable as something like this 4Runner as a result. That pretty much leaves us with the Nissan Xterra filling out the bottom of this segment, the 4Runner right here being a little bit more expensive than that Nissan. And then sort of sideways off to the side we have the four-door Wrangler. The four-door Wrangler is kind of a different vehicle. It's actually more modifiable than this 4Runner in many ways because it retains a solid front axle as well. We don't have a solid front axle in the 4Runner. The 4Runner is still trying to balance on-road and off-road more or less equally. Your average crossover today is really favoring the on-road segment, whereas the Jeep Wrangler is favoring the off-road segment, and the 4Runner is really trying to be that middle line. Toyota gave the 4Runner a significant refresh for the 2014 model year, and part of that was an entirely new front-end look. There are actually three different front-end looks. We have a different one in the limited model, and the TRD Pro model gets this very aggressive off-road oriented look with black portions of the bumper right here and this very large Toyota logo. All models have these headlamps that stick out a decent amount from the vehicle. There is an aerodynamic reason for this particular design. However, this design right here is something that's always perplexed me. It makes the car look both angry and sad at the same time. From the side profile, we have a very traditional SUV kind of side profile. The 4Runner is a body-on-frame vehicle. There are two different ways of building a car, really. There's a unibody and a body-on-frame. A body-on-frame vehicle like this has a separate body and then a separate frame, logically enough. So everything that's the interior of the car, that's all on the body. And then right under the body, there's a frame right here under the vehicle. So the difference between the maximum ground clearance somewhere under here and sort of this part of the body, that's all taken up by the frame. This means that versus your average crossover vehicle, there's a little bit less interior room going on for the same exterior dimensions of the vehicle. That also means that the floorboards right here in the car are pretty much level with the door opening. If you're looking at a crossover or another unibody type vehicle, the floorboards would tend to go down a little bit after the door opening because you don't have that frame right there. Out back, the styling of the 4Runner is much more conventional and much less controversial. We have these tail lamps that do stick out a little bit from the vehicle, sort of mirroring the headlamps. And right back here we have a very large 4Runner logo. Again, we're in the TRD Pro model. There are a few differences between this and the other models out there. We get a lot more black trim in the TRD Pro model. One significant change over truly old school SUVs is that we have a tailgate hatch that opens up rather than sideways. A handy feature that Toyota has retained with the 4Runner is a power rear window that does go up and down, sort of like a side window. Before we hop under the hood, let's talk about what comes with the TRD Pro package. In addition to this blacked out front end that's a little bit different than you'll find in the Trail model, we also have this heavy duty skid plate right under here with TRD badging. Even though the approach and departure angles are already very good on the 4Runner, we get improvements in the TRD Pro version thanks to this redesigned front end bumper. Up front, we get a 1.5 inch lift, and versus the regular 4Runner Trail model, we actually get softer springs in this model. The softer springs allow a smoother ride over really rough terrain, and we have about a full inch more suspension travel in either direction. Helping keep the slightly softer suspension under control is a completely revised damper system. Up front, we get struts that are thicker in diameter than the original ones, and in the back, we actually get struts with a remote reservoir. The reason for the larger diameter dampers as well as the remote reservoir in the rear is that it gives you more fluid to work with. If you're out on a road and you're really driving your vehicle quickly and aggressively over rough terrain, you can get some pretty sharp and pretty quick suspension movements, and that causes the fluid inside the strut to overheat and or start foaming. Either condition is not terribly good for your suspension. It really does cause the suspension field to really decrease drastically, especially in an off-road environment. The reservoir, as well as the larger diameter struts, really helps prevent that. Of course, no tuning package would be complete without unique tires and wheels, and we of course get these blacked out TRD Pro models. Out back, we also get a suspension lift, but it's not quite as large as the front. We still get approximately an inch of suspension travel increase back here, however. Right over here, you can see the upgraded damper, and this right over here is the auxiliary fluid reservoir for this damper unit. Toyota no longer offers a V8 engine in the 4Runner, so the only engine on offer is this 4-liter V6. It produces 270 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque. It's mated only to a 5-speed automatic transmission, sending power to the rear wheels by default or you can also get 2 different 4-wheel drive systems. The Limited model uses a true center differential. It's a torsion unit, or a torque sensing unit. It splits power front and rear automatically, so there's no user intervention required, and there's no 2-speed transfer case. The model we're taking a look at here has a part-time 4-wheel drive system. It does use a transfer case and a manual selector. It has 3 different modes: 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. Now 4 high and 4 low are modes where the center coupling is locked, so you shouldn't use those on regular pavement. So you shouldn't use those on asphalt or on cement. You should only use those modes on gravel or grass or any kind of loose terrain. Fuel economy comes in at the lower end of the spectrum: 17 miles per gallon city, 22 highway, and 19 combined for the 2-wheel drive model, 17, 21, and 18 combined for the 4-wheel drive model. The fuel economy is the same regardless of which 4-wheel drive system you get. The way that happens is Toyota actually reduces the tire size on the Limited version, and that kind of gives you the same fuel economy even though it's an all-time all-wheel drive system. I rank front seat comfort at 8 out of 10 points. We have the multi-way power driver seat in our particular model. It also features a 2-way adjustable lumbar support. All models get a tilt telescopic steering column. There are 3 different seat coverings to choose from. Base models get a fabric interior. The model that we're in right here gets the new Luxe imitation leather interior. You'll also find that in the Trail model. It's a passable imitation of leather. It's supposed to be more environmentally friendly. It's relatively similar to what you'll find in a lot of Lexus models as well. Now, if you get the Limited model, you can get real leather on the inside. Rear seat comfort also comes in at 8 out of 10 points. One thing to know about the 4Runner is that since the wheelbase is relatively short, these rear doors are a little bit smaller than you'll find in your average crossover. That does make getting in and out of the rear seats a little bit more difficult. However, once you're on the inside, there's a decent amount of headroom and legroom going on. This front seat is adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, and I have about 4.5 inches of legroom going on right there. If I move on over to the passenger seat, this front seat is all the way back in its tracks. I still have about 3 inches of legroom left right there. The outboard rear seats in the 4Runner do offer a recline feature. There's a little lever right over here on the side of the seat. It actually has a reasonable amount of recline. This is the most reclined position, and this is the most upright position. Perhaps because of its traditional SUV origin, the rear seats in the 4Runner do have a more traditional folding mechanism. So we have to pull the seat bottom cushion up, lower the headrest, flip it forward, and then we can fold this rear seat back down. It does fold flat, but it does not fold completely flat with the cargo area. The cargo area will always be a little bit lower than this seat back. You can get an optional 3rd row in the 4Runner. Our vehicle does not have that optional 3rd row, but it is a little bit tight, so it really should be reserved to naughty children or your mother-in-law. Even though we do lose a little bit of room because we have that frame to contend with versus your average crossover vehicle that offers 3 rows, we still have a generous cargo compartment right in here. That's partially because the spare tire is jammed underneath the 4Runner. It's under the load floor, so you won't find it under a hatch. I have 2 large roller bags. You can easily fit a decent amount of cargo right back here in the rear. And if you do get the 3rd row option, there really isn't very much space between that 3rd row and the cargo hatch, so you can't really fit a whole lot of cargo back here if you are going to put 7 people in your 4Runner. Overall, I give this 8 out of 10 points in my exclusive trunk comfort index. We do have a 110-volt power inverter in our particular fully loaded model, as well as a 12-volt power outlet. We get a few little storage cubbies and bins right here, but we do not have a standard tonneau cover. One nice touch is we do have a little handle right here. It's sort of a fabric pull strap so that we can help close the lid on yourself. Let's take a quick look around the interior now. We have height adjustable seatbelts for both the driver and the front passenger, and we have 2-way adjustable headrests. Again, our tester has the Softex upholstery right here. This is not leather, this is actually an imitation leather product. It is fairly similar to the new Luxe upholstery that Lexus uses. The doors are predominantly made of soft touch fabric, which is a little bit surprising for this segment. We have stitched pleather right over here, and then we have this large, softly padded armrest. You will find harder plastics, of course, lower below that, and then around this area right here on the door. The styling on the 4Runner is very upright and blocky. We have this very vertical handle right here, helps you hold on if you're off-roading, and the window switches are kept up nice and high on the door. Because the 4Runner has off-roading in mind, we do have an assist handle right here for the passenger to help them hold on during off-roading maneuvers. We have a hard plastic dashboard that does make it easier to clean if it gets dusty or dirty on your off-roading adventures. Right down here we have sort of a metallic effect trim in our particular model. Fake wood is found in certain versions of the 4Runner. If we move down lower in the dashboard, we do find a reasonably sized glove box. It is relatively vertical, but not terribly deep, so I wasn't able to fit an iPad in there. Moving up to the center console, this is where you will find the off-roading controls for the 4Runner. Keep in mind that we are in the TRD Pro model. This is very similar to what you'll find in the trail-rated model, and you do not get this in the SR5 or the Limited model. Right over here we have the knob for hill ascent and descent control, so you just enable the system when you're in 4 low by pressing that little button right there, and then you can adjust how fast the vehicle is crawling along the ground. If you choose this absolute slowest speed, then it does get a little bit jerky. You can see that over in our drive section of the video. This knob on the right allows you to adjust the various vehicle electronic systems to work better when off-roading. This only works in the 4-wheel drive mode as well, but unlike this particular system, you don't need to be in 4 low. This one works in 4 high as well. You just enable it, and then you select the kind of terrain that you're going to be on. Right down here we have mud, sand, and dirt. Then we have loose rock, we have moguls, and then finally we have rock crawling right over here. If we move on up to these sets of buttons, this is the rear axle locking button. We have the traction control off button, and then we have advanced traction control. Depending on your rock climbing adventure, you actually may be better off with a track than a completely locked rear axle, because sometimes you do need a little bit of axle slip, especially if you're on a vertical or nearly vertical rock surface. Depending on exactly how the tires are gripping, if you're going across it, etc., the A-track can be more advantageous. Moving on down the dashboard, this display right here is where you actually get the readout for that multi-terrain system right there, as you can see. It also is where you'll see fuel economy readouts as well as your clock. Below that display and the air vents, we find our touchscreen infotainment system. This is optional in the 4Runner. This operates very similarly to the other in-tune infotainment systems that Toyota has developed recently. Go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen to be taken on over to a video about that. Now, the only thing to know about that video is that it was shot in a Toyota Highlander, so the screen is a little bit bigger. It operates essentially the same, except that now this software does support text message readouts from Apple iOS devices. You have to have the right version of Apple iOS software, and of course you have to have the right version of this particular system. But at this time, all of the newer Entune systems, so every Toyota with this Entune type system on the lot, will have that functionality. Below that screen, you'll find the climate controls. Our particular model does have the single zone climate control. Right down here, you'll find the USB and auxiliary input right there, a little storage cubby, and a 12-volt power outlet. Let's work our way down the center console now. We have one large cup holder right here. You'll find the 4-wheel drive control lever right over there. We have 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low, as well as a neutral mode. Because we're in the TRD Pro model, we have TRD stamped right on this traditional shifter right here for the 5-speed automatic. Storage compartment right there, another large cup holder. Over here we have our heated seat controls, and we have the 1 touch down and 1 touch up rear window control, and that is the window on the rear hatch. We have a large padded center armrest that is very deep for a rear-wheel drive vehicle. You'll find an additional 12-volt power port right in there. A lot of room for wallets and other accessories. If off-roading tends to make your passengers cry, we do have a tissue holder right over here and a pen holder for writing notes for when you hit that rock. Over on the driver's side, we have a fairly basic 4-dial instrument cluster. We have our speedometer over here, tachometer, engine temperature, as well as the fuel gauge. We have a multi-information display right here in the middle, but it doesn't display as much information as other Toyota models. We have our average fuel economy there, current fuel economy, cruising range, elapsed time, our speed, the position of the front wheels. It's sort of a rough indicator, so if I turn this steering wheel around, you can see how that's changed. And then we move on to our settings. You can change certain vehicle settings. We get a blank screen, and then we're right back to the average fuel economy. If we move on out to the steering wheel, we do have a handsome 4-spoke steering wheel. Volume buttons right over here, mode selection button for the radio. This particular button arrangement is kind of interesting for Toyota because it actually controls this screen right over here in the center console. So you can see if I toggle this button up and down, that's actually controlling that radio selection right there. I can click to enter. You can also move forward and backward, up and down in various screens. It really depends on what screen you're in on that Entune system. It also acts as track forward, backward as well. We have a return button, mode button with a mute button right over there. We have our dedicated phone buttons right over here, voice command button. The display button controls that display right there in the center console. Cruise control is on a stock, as you'd expect from Toyota. Overall, the steering wheel is a very chunky, very comfortable steering wheel. It has a very nice, thick grip right there, sport grips right up top, and a 4-spoke truck-like design. Over here to the left of the driver, we have our windshield de-icer. There's actually a separate grid right on the front windshield to help you de-ice your wipers, and we can control the inverter that's right back there in the trunk. We can switch it between 100 watts and 400 watts or off. Let's start at this drive section of the review out here on the paved road. Now I'm going to dispense with the normal scores because I don't think that they apply that well to the 4Runner. The 4Runner really sells in kind of a vacuum, or competes in a vacuum, if you will, because the Wrangler 4-door, the Nissan Xterra, and the 4Runner are really the only 3 vehicles of this type left in our market. And even still, I don't think that those 3 vehicles compete that directly with one another. The Wrangler is a very different kind of vehicle. It's obviously very off-road focused. Of course, you can get it with the the convertible top, the rag top on it. The doors are removable. It has a solid front axle. It's definitely solidly off-road focused. The 4Runner is very off-road focused, but it also has the ability to be a normal daily driver vehicle. So this is the kind of vehicle you can take your kids to school in, etc. It has slightly better on-road manners. It has, of course, a hard top and you can get this sunroof in it just like you could a regular crossover vehicle. But this doesn't handle like a crossover, neither does the Nissan Xterra. The Xterra is a decent amount less expensive than the 4Runner. In fact, the Nissan Xterra fully loaded ends up about the same price as a base 4Runner. So you could almost consider the Nissan Xterra the cheaper option in this segment, the 4Runner being sort of the upper end, more luxurious option in this segment, if you will. We also have a decent amount more electronic gadgets and goodies going on in the 4Runner that you don't find in that Nissan. Now, as I said, the Nissan and the 4Runner do have more of an on-road focus than the Jeep does, and that is really obvious out here on the road, even in this TRD Pro version that we're driving here. And this TRD Pro version is the least capable on-road vehicle. It has a lifted suspension versus the regular ones. We have these high aspect ratio tires for off-roading. Doesn't really feel all that great driving around on the road, if I'm honest. The 4Runner is designed to be the kind of vehicle that you can drive on your daily commute, you can do the school run in, and then you can off-road it on the weekends. And that's definitely true for the trail model of the 4Runner. The TRD Pro version that we're in right now and the Limited model fall on either ends of that spectrum. The Limited model is the most on-road capable version. Now, it's still, of course, very capable for gravel roads, ice, snow, that sort of thing. I actually think that if you're just buying a 4Runner because you do plan to go to your ski runs or your ski resorts, things like that on the weekend, then the Limited model may actually be the best version of the 4Runner to get. It has a full-time four-wheel drive system. It doesn't have the low-ratio gearbox that you find in the Trail or this TRD Pro model, but it does have that all-time all-wheel drive system, and that really makes it very sure-footed in the snow and in the ice. The Limited model also has relatively lower aspect ratio tires on it, and that does make it handle a little bit more like your average crossover in this segment. The Trail model, on the other hand, has taller tires, and those are more suited for real off-roading kind of situations. If you're going to rock climb or you're going to climb up concrete curbs, that sort of thing, you're going to be less likely to bend your rim if you have those taller aspect ratio tires. And we also have this part-time all-wheel drive system on the Trail and TRD Pro model. Part-time all-wheel drive systems should never be engaged unless you're on a slippery surface. So if you're on gravel or mud or grass or something like that, anything other than asphalt or cement, you can engage the all-wheel drive system or the four-wheel drive system. You can put it in 4 high or 4 low. Those are the two options we get in the Trail and TRD Pro model. In the TRD Pro model versus the Trail model, we have different tires. These are again more targeted towards off-road type situations. We get a slightly lifted suspension, it's about an inch taller, and most importantly, we get softer springs than you get in the Trail model. Now, while that does improve the off-road ability of the TRD Pro model, it definitely has an impact on the on-road ability of this model. When it comes to acceleration, I ran from 0 to 60 in 7.8 seconds in this vehicle. That's just about the same as the Nissan Xterra. It's just a little bit slower than the last Wrangler Unlimited that I was in. In terms of overall handling, you should know that your average compact pickup truck is going to handle very much like this 4Runner, and your average crossover is going to handle a decent amount better. It's going to feel a lot more connected to the road, a lot more car-like than the 4Runner. That's not a knock against the 4Runner, it's just part of the reality when you tune a vehicle for off-road performance. That's really why the Jeep Grand Cherokee, for instance, really handles an awful lot better, but it doesn't perform quite as well off-road as it used to, because Jeep has really been chasing the on-road manners of that vehicle, not the off-road manners. And in many respects, Toyota has been going in the opposite direction with the 4Runner. Toyota has a complete lineup of very capable on-road crossovers, and so they've been targeting this 4Runner as more of an off-road type vehicle. That's exactly why we have this TRD Pro package now. Let's talk about transmissions just a little bit before we hit the trail. This vehicle, as I said earlier, has a 5-speed automatic transmission. The big thing you need to know about this versus something like a Jeep Grand Cherokee, for instance, is that first gear isn't as low and the final gear isn't as high as the competitor's 8-speed automatic transmission. That means that fuel economy definitely suffers a little bit in the 4Runner. I've been averaging only 15.2 miles per gallon over about 200 miles of mixed driving in this vehicle. That's definitely lower than you get in the much heavier Jeep Grand Cherokee. The other thing you need to know is that first gear isn't as low in this vehicle as it is in some of those other competitors, most namely that Jeep Wrangler. When you take into account the final drive ratio that we have in this particular vehicle, first gear comes in around 12-to-1. That's not terribly low. You'll actually find a lower first gear in something like a Ford Explorer, which is definitely not an off-road type vehicle anymore. If you engage 4 low in the 4Runner, you end up at 31-to-1, and while that does sound fairly low, the Jeep Wrangler does have an available 73-to-1 rock crawl ratio. That is a decent amount lower than this vehicle. Trails like we're on right now are really what crossovers were intended for, but the 4Runner can do an awful lot more than this. It really is designed for more true off-roading duty than your average crossover. Helping that out, of course, is a solid rear differential in the back that has an electronic locker in it, so I can just press this button right up here and lock that rear differential. We don't have a locking front differential in the 4Runner, however. Toyota tells us that that would have just added extra weight and extra complexity, and they think that it really wasn't necessary in this particular vehicle. We're now going further off the beaten path here, and this is where some of the benefits of this 4Runner really come into play. We have that nice skid plate up front, so I don't have to worry about that log that I just ran over right there, and we have a decent amount of ground clearance. Toyota has asked me very nicely to try and minimize the body damage on the 4Runner, so of course I'm going to try to do that as much as possible. The TRD Pro and the Trail models get hill ascent and hill descent control. It's a little knob right up here, right by the controls for the sunroof. We have that enabled right now, and that's the noise you're hearing in the video right now. It's the ABS controller because it's keeping the vehicle at a particular speed. This is the absolute slowest crawl that this vehicle will do. We can actually scoot it on up to automatically control our hill ascent as well. That's what it's doing right now. So it will try and align all the vehicle systems to keep you in a very controlled hill ascent. And then of course, if the hill starts dropping down, it'll keep you at that same speed as you're going down the hill. You just get those funny ABS noises in the process. It is very adjustable here. We can also turn it completely off if you want to return control. You just press that button and it's off again. Now I'll try the terrain control here. And the terrain control, very much like we'll find in the Land Rover and Jeep products, has a number of options. I'll close this so you can actually see me. Right now we are in mud, sand, and dirt. There are also loose rocks, mogul, and rock climbing. Mud, sand, and dirt is probably the best for what we're on right now. This is really just sort of loosely graded dirt here and some tree roots. Of course, the 4Runner has no problem with this kind of activity. Tires are really the limitation. That's really why I'm not trying anything more strenuous with the 4Runner, is this does have the factory tires. And even in this TRD Pro configuration, there was a decent amount of deference towards on-road ability in this vehicle. So if you want serious off-roading tires, there's going to be an on-road penalty. They're also going to be noisier, etc. But you're going to need a tire tread pattern that's a little bit more capable as far as true off-roading. Overall, it's trails like this where the 4Runner really shines. The locking rear differential really helped us get up that hill. We wouldn't have been able to do that without it. I did actually have to lock it. The turning radius isn't the best in the world in the 4Runner. I wish it was a little bit tighter, but that locking rear differential really does help make up the difference. Another thing that the 4Runner has that's kind of an interesting innovation is it has a kinetic dynamic suspension system, or KDSS as Toyota likes to call it. It's kind of an interesting innovation. Instead of having traditional anti-sway bars like you'd find in something like a Jeep Grand Cherokee, this has a hydraulic system. And the hydraulic system is sort of cross-connected in the vehicle. The front left wheel is connected to the rear right wheel and vice versa. And what this system does is when you're off-roading and you're in serious off-camber situations, it can actually force one wheel down onto the road or the road surface or the gravel or whatever it is you're trying to climb along. And that's not something you can do in a traditional suspension system. So it improves the wheel articulation a great deal versus the regular system. So if you're trying to debate whether or not to check that KDSS option box when you're out there shopping for your 4Runner, you should ask yourself whether or not you're going to be seriously taking your vehicle off-road. Ooh, we have some nature coming into the vehicle here. Little tree leaf there. And if you are going to be taking your vehicle off-road, then I would definitely select that KDSS option box. Strangely enough, it's actually standard in the 4Runner Limited because it actually improves on-road dynamics as well. We're back in 4 High now, and it's really obvious when we're driving down dirt roads like this more swiftly that the wheel articulation, the softer springs, and the taller aspect ratio tires are a good combination for the TRD Pro model. It would be an awful lot rougher of a ride in the Limited or the Trail or the SR5 model because you don't get as much wheel articulation in those vehicles, so it can't soak up these large bumps quite as easily. Pricing starts at $32,820 for the 2-wheel drive model. If you want the 4-wheel drive model, that will set you back $33,180 at least. The most expensive model right before this TRD Pro is $43,655, and that's for a fully loaded limited 4x4 model. Now that limited model, of course, does use an entirely different 4-wheel drive system than the model we're taking a look at here. Toyota hasn't announced pricing yet for the TRD Pro model. They have told us, however, it will be a relatively limited edition. It should ring in around $45,000 or so, making it the most expensive 4Runner available. It should be approximately $4,500 more than a fully loaded Trail model. The Nissan Xterra is very similarly themed, but it's a decent amount less expensive. It starts at around $23,000 and it tops out just about $33,000 where the 4Runner takes over. I've read a decent number of reviews that call the 4Runner the most conflicted sport utility vehicle available in America today. But I think that they're really wrong about that, because I think this is the most true vehicle out there in this segment. It's true to its mission of being a blend between on-road and off-road ability, and that's not something you really get in this segment anymore. Pretty much everybody has abandoned this off-road ability segment for true on-road ability. The Nissan Pathfinder, the Ford Explorer, just to name a few, have gone to a very crossover shape, and they're really not any good off-road anymore. Sure, you could take your Pathfinder or your Ford Explorer on dirt roads like we have been taking this 4Runner, but this 4Runner could climb this hill if we needed it to and if I didn't worry about scratching its paint, and you couldn't do that in a Pathfinder or an Explorer. The Nissan Xterra is obviously a good value option, but you don't get the same kind of feature content in the Xterra as you do in the 4Runner. The 4Runner has all those nifty electronic gadgets and gizmos to help you climb up hills, help you select your terrain, help adjust the four-wheel drive system to the particular situation, and the Xterra is more of a manual type system. The interior is also a decent amount nicer in the 4Runner in terms of seat comfort, overall design, as well as feature functionality. The Jeep Wrangler is more off-road focused than the 4Runner, and if you want to do any serious lifting of your vehicle, then that Jeep is going to be the better option, because we do have a solid front axle and it is a lot easier to lift that kind of vehicle. And lastly, there is the option of that third row in the 4Runner. It is a little bit compact for average sized people, however it's handier to have one than not. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes and this has been the 2015 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. You can find me over at facebook.com/alexandautos, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com. I'll see you next week.